So now we'll move to the first part of the 19th century, but we stay in the same zone, so in Syria and Egypt. And I'm going to talk to you about conflicts revolving around a clerical hat taking place between the Greek Orthodox and the Greek Catholics. And so, as I said, it is in Syria and Egypt, so in the Ottoman Empire in the early 19th century. So the time of the Tanzimat, the time of the institutionalization of the different non-Muslim communities called the millets. So the question of the hat will represent the gradual emancipation of the Greek Catholics from the Greek Orthodox. Because they came to form during the Tanzimat their own millets, so their own recognized communities, where before they were part of the Greek Orthodox. And so the conflict revolves around the legitimacy of the wearing of this hat by the Greek Catholics. So it will involve a lot of actors, including the governors, the port, the sultan, the patriarchs, the consul, but also the notables of each community. So I won't be able to talk about all the actors and the complexity of this issue because in 20 minutes it's impossible, but I'll try to give you an idea of these interrelations. So this is actually the hat itself. So this is the hat worn by the bishops of the Greek Orthodox Church in Syria. Knowing that each region is a bit different, so I'm just talking about Syria. So the timeline of this conflict, it started in 1817 and it ended in 1847, so 30 years. So for a hat, that's a lot. Although the question of the fez will last much longer. So to give you just an idea of the structure of the Greek Orthodox Church, so you have in Istanbul the ecumenical patriarchate of Constantinople, and then you have other patriarchs, which are relatively have less authority, especially in the 19th century. So you have the Patriarchate of Antioch, Jerusalem, and Alexandria, that for what concerns us. Knowing that for the Patriarchate of Antioch, the population is mostly Arabic and they're mostly Greek clergy. And this division, this ethnic difference with also the influence of missionaries will make that in the 18th century the division between the Greek Catholics and the Greek Orthodox will be sealed, and each one of them in 1724 elects their own patriarch. So we have now a Greek Catholic Patriarch of Antioch and a Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Antioch. So we have to remember through this talk that the clergy is not autonomous vis-à-vis social, political and economic forces, and there's as always some part of the taifa, some part of the group that challenges the clerical power. And they use the Ottoman power structure to do so, they use the consuls to do so, or conversion. So now we come to the 19th century, which is the center of my talk. In 1817, the Greek Catholic priests of Aleppo are exiled by a joint action of the Greek Orthodox Patriarch and the governor. The same thing happened in 1820, so the Catholic priests have to leave the city, the Greek Catholic, and they all go either to Lebanon or to Egypt. So then at that point, in the 20s, the Greek Orthodox Patriarch has the superiority in these two cities. But then, in 1821, there is the Greek uprising, and the Patriarch, Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, is killed because of suspicion of his alliance with the Greek Revolution, although he did excommunicate the rebellion leaders. But still, that makes that for some temporarily, the Greek Orthodox lose their precedence also in Syria, and thus the Catholic priests that had been exiled, they return to their homes in 1824. But still, they couldn't dress like the clergy, they had to do mass in houses and to pretend to sell things to people to be able to enter their house and preach for the Greek Catholic Church. So they're not recognized as a clergy. Finally, in 1831, Istanbul, so the port, recognized the Catholic millet under the Armenian Catholic Patriarch, and so all the Catholics and the unions, that is the church that got separated from the Orthodox counterpart, are under one representative, which is the Armenian Catholic Patriarch. So there's orders sent to the provinces to stop persecuting unions, Catholics, and to allow them to have their own churches. And that corresponds in Syria to the rule of Ibrahim Ali. So Ibrahim Ali is the son of Muhammad Ali, that our colleague talked about earlier. And he will also do a lot of reforms in Damascus, as he did in Egypt, so earlier than the official start of the Tanzimat of 1839. So Ibrahim Ali actually took control of Syria from 1832 to 1841, and he favored the Greek Catholics, because they had come with him to Egypt, and so they came back to Syria with him, and he used them in the administration and gave them a lot of favors. And thus, when the notables, Greek Catholic notables come back to Damascus, they come back victorious against the Greek Orthodox. So they get their own church, they start to wear the clerical hats, but also the notables start to wear the hat of the ashrafs, that is the descendants of the Prophet, who had a special headgear with wearing green, and that was reserved for them. And during the rule of Ibrahim Ali, actually Christians could also wear this hat, and only Greek Catholics start to wear it. So there's the victory for the Greek Catholic clergy, but also for the notables. And that creates a lot of resentment from the Greek Orthodox, of course, and incidents happen of violence between the two groups. At one point, some Greek Orthodox kids start to throw stones at this Greek Catholic priest wearing these hats. And in revenge, a group of young Catholics go to attack Greek Orthodox in the street. So there's some events of violence like that. Then in 1835, there is institutionalization of the millets to counter Russian influence through the Greek Orthodox. And so the Jewish also grand rabbis recognize the Armenian Catholic get their own millets. And the Greek Catholics thus really start the institutionalization of their church to open bishops and then to start to take territory. In revenge for that, in 1836, the Greek Orthodox fight back. Okay, so they get a firman from the state to forbid Greek Catholics from wearing the clerical hat. And this is where our story starts, actually, but I had to go through the historical background. So the clergy, the Greek Catholic clergy, have to stay in their houses because they don't want to go out without a hat, because that would be insulting for them. And then following that, 6 firmans are published over the next 30 years over this issue, in either forbidding the hat or allowing the hat or modifying it, depending on the bribes that are given to the different levels of the government, depending on which foreign power has the presidency in this time, either France, who supports the Greek Catholics, or Russia, that support the Greek Orthodox. So it's a long story, and it has left a lot of traces in the archives. And it shows that the two groups know how to use very well the justice system and the different levels of the hierarchy, and they know how to adapt their discourse also to win their case. So this story ends in 1847 with the recognition of the Greek Catholic Patriarch as the head of a new millet. So the Greek Catholic millet is recognized as a nation with its own privilege and rights. So it lasts 30 years, as I said. And what's interesting to me is the discourse of various parties regarding this hat, the legitimacy claims that come with it, the narratives of religious orthodoxy and loyalty that are aimed at obtaining the recognition from the state, but also access to resources. So this is what we will see. Okay, so this is the hat itself, I will talk about it. So first of all, I will talk about the meaning of the hat for the Greek Catholics and for the Greek Orthodox. So for the Greek Catholics, they use the hat as a legitimacy claim, as a fait accompli. So you show status to get status. If you can wear the clerical hat, then you will be recognized as an official clergy. But it's also a strategy vis-à-vis the followers. Because if you can show that you haven't, you became Catholic, but you still have the same rights and you still have the same clothing, then it's easier to get more Greek Orthodox to join the Greek Catholics. For the Greek Orthodox patriarchs of Antioch understood this very well, and thus they want to forbid the hat, and they want to for the flock to be able to distinguish between their official priests and bishops and the Greek Catholics to avoid conversion. And in response to that, it's very interesting that the Greek Catholic patriarch said that how weak is a faith if it can just be influenced by a change of clothing. But actually, it is very important. And they developed narratives of authenticity regarding these hats. So for the Greek Orthodox, they said that the Greek Catholics left the church and so they should change their hat, right? The Greek Catholics, they say that actually it's the Greek Orthodox who entered into Shiism when they allied with the Ottoman Empire against Rome, and that they thus led the church, they formed their own church, so they should change their clothing. But it also means, the changing of the hat means also access to, the ability to wear this hat also means access to resources. Because there is this notion in the Tanzimat that all non-Muslim millets are equal. That is, all non-Muslim communities have an equal status, and thus one millet cannot interfere in the affairs of another millet. But this is a very difficult concept to apply because both groups consider themselves victims of the oppression of the other group. And actually in the 19th century, the jurists try to understand these concepts, and what they come up with is that what is appointed to one group cannot be given to another group. So if you build a church for the Greek Orthodox, it cannot be later given to the Greek Catholics. So because it was given from the state to a particular group. And so if they don't use it, they have to give it back, but it cannot be transferred from one group to another. So now the question of who is the initial owner and who is who has the weight of tradition on their side becomes very important. And those narratives of tradition and legitimacies have very political, social, and economical consequences. Also because if you wear this hat, then you can go around and ask the dime on the population, and you can take fees on burial and marriage, etc. And since the rights didn't change, the population will have no way of knowing if you're Greek Orthodox or Greek Catholic. So the hat itself, the first part is the hat, the hard hat, and it's called kamilafkion. In Arabic it's kaluse, and then around it there is a veil, which is called the kolokion, and that's only for bishops. So the meaning of the hat itself, as explained by the different parties, is to show chastity. And that's why deacons who are not married, who are married cannot wear it. So that means that if you force the clergy not to wear their hats, that means that they cannot show that they have chastity, and thus it's demeaning for them. So first, the Greek Orthodox tried to make the Greek Catholic, tried to forbid the Greek Catholic from wearing the hat, but when they saw it didn't work, so they tried to modify it. So they tried to find an arrangement so that it would show a distinction. So the first thing that they say, in 1839, the Orthodox Patriarchs say, well, maybe you should wear just a skufia. So the skufia, they say you should wear a skufia with, instead of a black cloth, as we saw before, a dark blue or purple. The Greek Catholic, they say, well, we agree with the dress that will be dark blue or purple, as long as it's very dark, because it wouldn't be too extravagant. But the hat, it's impossible. Actually, the skufia was worn for the Greek Orthodox Church only on informal occasions. So when they were not officiating, they would wear the skufia because it was more practical. So when the Greek Orthodox asked the Greek Catholics to wear only this hat, it's insulting. It's saying that, showing a lesser status. Also, it was not hard, it was soft. So it didn't have this prestige associated with a hard hat. Then the second proposition, the Greek in 1841, when the Greek Catholics come under the authority of the Armenian Catholics, the Greek Orthodox Patriarchs say, well, now that you are like the Armenians, you're under the authority of the Armenians, so you should wear like them. And actually, that's quite a completely different headgear than the Catholics, the Greeks. So the Greek Catholics say, well, this is not Greek at all, this is very Armenian, and we're not Armenians, we're Greeks. We're Rome, so we want to claim this Rome heritage. We're just Catholics, and you are heretics, so we don't want to look like you, but we are Rome. So of course they don't agree to this. And so the negotiation continued to keep the Rome identity, but with a Catholic twist on it. So the Greek Catholic Patriarch proposed to put a sign on the hat that would show that they are Catholics, and he proposed this cross, which is actually the cross of the French king. And so the Greek Orthodox refused because it would give too much prestige to the Greek Catholics in the eyes of the population if they were wearing the cross of the French king. Then Rifat Pasha, who is the foreign minister, make an interesting proposition. He said, well, to find a solution to this issue, because he started to get bored of it, it has been a lot of years, let's write in Arabic on the hat, Roman Catholic. Okay, pointing to the Arabic identity of the Greek Catholic Church. But what's interesting is that in the letters that the Greek Catholic Patriarch sends to Istanbul, he never talked about the Arabic identity of his church. Like he wasn't, obviously it was clear to him, but he never revendicated an Arabic identity. But for the foreign minister, the difference between the Roman Catholic and the Roman Orthodox is obviously an ethnic difference. But the Greek Orthodox also refused this modification because it was not different enough. And so they came up with a great idea. They said, well, since you like the Egyptians so much, and since you won your independence through the Egyptians, and you're allied with France, then you should wear a hat in the form of a pyramid, or an obelisk, or anything that looks Egyptian. So actually, kind of what the Armenian inner hat would look like, which is on the top. What actually the Greek Orthodox were not serious, they just wanted to delegitimize the Greek Catholics in the eyes of the Ottoman government by showing that they had very strong links with the Egyptians, and since the Egyptians rebelled against the state, their loyalty is also not clear. Of course, the Greek Catholics said that this is not acceptable, that everybody would make fun of them and throw stuff at them, so but the question of loyalty is very important in this issue because each side tried to accuse the other of disloyalty to the state, and through the use of closing loyalty can be shown. So the Greek Catholics accused the Greek Orthodox to have supported the Greek uprising and so to be Greek and not Ottoman enough. And the Greek Orthodox accused the Catholics to have become Frank, so Europeans, and then not to be Ottoman enough neither. Okay? So clothing is a tool to delegitimize the opponent. Knowing that, for example, in one example, the patriarch, Greek Catholic patriarch, walks in the street with his hat, although he's not allowed to. It's in one of the times that there's a firman to forbid him. And so the Greek Catholics denounce him to the governor. The governor calls him, and actually the Greek Catholics say, well, actually I'm a French citizen, because the Greek Patriarch, Greek Catholic Patriarch at that time had a French protection. I'm a French citizen, so I don't have to obey the rules of the Sultan. And so the Greek Orthodox, that was quite funny, answered, well, if you're a French citizen, then you should wear the bernetta, right? Because this is what French people wear. Knowing that in the same year, the French consul came in Damascus for the first time wearing this hat. He was the first European to wear it. And people started to laugh at him, and he was so humiliated. He came back and he wrote this letter to the ambassador saying, I went into the street and they started to call me Abu Tanjara. So if you know what Tanjara means, it's a cooking pot, because it looks like a backwards cooking pot. And so for Muslim to be asked to wear this hat is insulting, first because it doesn't show his clergy status, and then because it's ridiculous for them. As it will be later on, it will be something completely normal as we saw this morning, but in the early 19th century, it's like, what is this? It doesn't show any status, and it looks like a cooking pot. So, then in 1843, the Greek Catholic millet started to get a lot of recognition, and the foreign minister that said that, well, since now you're very close to us, you should put a nishan, so a medal on the hat with a crown and a cross on it. And that's a very Ottoman hat. I mean, it's like the most Ottoman clerical hat could ever be imagined. And it's a sign to show the recognition and the loyalty of the Greek Catholics. At the same time, just after this hat is discussed, the foreign minister sends letters to the different governors to tell them to treat the Greek Catholic Patriarch well, and 1 year later they win their independence as a community. So the hat actually showed what was coming after. Finally, of course it's not adopted because the Greek Orthodox still complained about this hat, but finally in 1847 the Greek Catholic Patriarch Maximus Mazloum is officially recognized as the Patriarch of the Greek Catholic millet, which became also now he became the patriarch of Antioch, Jerusalem, Alexandria, and all the east. So it's pretty large. And so the government decides that he should wear a six-sided hat. So it's still a hard hat, but it has 6 sides. And purple, and it's darker than this, but I don't have any pictures in colors. So in dark purple, and the veil around it would also be dark purple. The Greek Orthodox complain, but it's too late now. The Greek Catholics have a lot of recognition, and thus the matter ends here. So it took 37 years to find the right hat. So in conclusion, what would seem like an ecclesiastical affair, something a bit boring, actually shows that the hat has a lot of meaning associated with it. It's a way to claim legitimacy, to get access to different kind of resources, and it's linked to different narratives of orthodoxy and tradition, loyalty to the state, and it's a tool in the time of the institutionalization of the millets. And this is reflected in the different negotiations. Thank you.